Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the second of my 3 videos listing my anticipated book releases for 2025. I hope all of you had a wonderful Christmas, or whichever holiday you might celebrate this season, and if you don't celebrate any, I hope it's been a peaceful week so far. In this episode, horror. 2025 looks like it's going to be a very strong year for readers who like a good shudder when they curl up with a book, and unlike science fiction. And by the way, let me express my thanks for the wonderful reception you guys gave that video. Thank you all for that. But anyway, unlike SF, horror as a publishing category is getting stronger every year. And this is a great sign when you consider that for the longest time, like 10 to 15 years, I think, horror had been so completely abandoned by mainstream traditional publishing that big chains like Barnes & Noble and even Borders before they went away no longer even had a horror section in their stores. But it's back and getting much more shelf space than it used to. And most importantly, the shelves aren't just 95% Stephen King plus 1 or 2 copies of Dracula and Frankenstein and maybe some Lovecraft. It's a thriving category with so many new and emerging authors and so many different approaches to storytelling within genre boundaries that horror fans can consider themselves witness to a full-on renaissance. So let's sample some of 2025's offerings. 40 books on this list, and it is far from complete. Now, you're going to see some omissions, okay? For example, Stephen King's Never Flinch comes out on May 27th, but this is his new book about Holly Gibney, and so it's more of a crime thriller than a horror novel. I mean, I'll read it for my own enjoyment, but it ain't looking like horror. Also, one of the more exciting pieces of recent news is that Orbit Books is launching its own horror imprint in 2025 with the vibe check-passing name of Run For It. But sadly, so far, their very short list of launch titles isn't making me rush to slam any pre-order buttons, so we'll just have to see what keeps coming. But I am absolutely rooting for them 1000%. Anyway, that's enough preamble. Let's open the scary basement door and venture down into the darkness for 2025's most anticipated horror. Please remember, all release dates are highly tentative and subject to change without notice. On January 7th, the new book by Clay McLeod Chapman arrives. Wake Up and Open Your Eyes is a jet black comedy about the impact of media on people's minds. We've all heard stories from people lamenting how they've lost their parents to Fox News or whatever. In this story, families across the country are tearing each other apart, literally, as people succumb to a form of possession that gets worse the more time they spend glued to a screen. On January 14th, Grady Hendrix finally releases Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. Now, initially it looked like this was going to drop last fall, but now we'll have it for the new year. Now, this sounds like a wildly entertaining story about a group of young women living in a high-control home for unwed mothers in 1970 who take up witchcraft to push back against their lack of empowerment. But power always comes with a price. Moving on to January 28th, Blackstone Publishing releases Eric LaRocca's new Exercise in Extremity. At dark, I become loathsome. Try putting that on your Tinder profile. It's about a man named Ashley who offers an unusual service to people contemplating ending their lives, giving them a near-death experience to help them rekindle their will to live. But his rituals and his unresolved grief over his own personal tragedies take a darker turn when he meets a strange new client. 2 more books on a busy 28th. Camilla Bruce returns with At the Bottom of the Garden, a mesmerizing gothic novel in which Clara, a murderess, becomes the guardian of her 2 orphaned nieces, only to discover the girls have a very inconvenient talent. They can see the ghosts of Clara's victims and even summon them. Finally, on the 28th, Susan Barker's Old Soul is a literary horror piece about Jake and Mariko, 2 strangers who miss a flight in Osaka, and over dinner discover they've both brutally lost loved ones whose paths crossed with the same beguiling woman no one has seen since. Jake travels from country to country, gathering chilling testimonies from others who have encountered her across the decades, a trail that leads him to Theo, a dying sculptor in rural New Mexico who knows the woman better than anyone and might just hold the key to who or what she is. Moving on into February, 2 books on the 4th, starting with Listen to Your Sister by Nina Veal, described as both laugh out loud and deeply terrifying for fans of Jordan Peele and Stranger Things. It's about 25-year-old Kala, who has become guardian to her teenage brothers, which is about the most thankless job I can think of. Now, when the boys' actions at a protest spiral out of control, they all end up on the run, retreating to, where else? A cabin in the woods, where their lives and reality will hang in the balance. And also on the 4th, if you haven't had too much of murder-crazed governesses, you're going to want to check out Victorian Psycho by Virginia Fieto, and it's exactly what you hope it is, an unhinged body count bloodbath in which Winifred slices and dices her way through everybody in her employer's manor house, shipping the bodies off to a Benedictine nunnery with notes saying things like, "Sorry, here's another one." Sounds like there is plenty of humor mixed in with the havoc. Jumping ahead a month to March 4th, Agostina Basterica, who disgusted readers everywhere with Tender is the Flesh, returns with a new novel, The Unworthy. It's a searing dystopian tale about climate crisis, ideological extremism, and the tidal pull of our most violent exploitative instincts, in which a woman is cloistered within a secretive, violent religious order, while outside, the world has fallen into chaos. 2 books on March 11th. Alex Grecian returns with Rose of Jericho from Nightfire, in which something wicked is going on in the 19th century New England village of Ascension. A mother wasting away from cancer is suddenly up and about. A boy, trampled by a milk cart, walks away from the accident. A hanged man can still speak, broken neck and all. The dead are not dying. And also on the 11th, Vanishing Daughters is the new tale by Cynthia Paleo, in which a serial killer has claimed the lives of 51 women in the Chicago area, and when Briar Thorne starts researching the murders, she meets a stranger who tells her there's more to her sleepless nights than bad dreams. They hold the key to putting ghosts to rest and stopping a killer. But the killer has caught on and is closing in. Get your wallets ready for March 18th with no fewer than 4 titles you won't want to miss, starting with a big one. Stephen Graham Jones is back with another epic of indigenous horror, The Buffalo Hunter Hunter. It's a chilling historical novel set in the American West in 1912, following a Lutheran priest who transcribes into his diary the life of a vampire who haunts the fields of the Blackfeet Reservation, looking for justice. Also on the 18th, Erica Worth, author of White Horse, returns with The Haunting of Room 904, about Olivia, a paranormal investigator in Denver looking into the mystery of a hotel room where young girls are periodically found dead, regardless of whatever room they were checked into. An investigation that leads Olivia down some darker than expected paths. White Line Fever is the new Nightfire release by Casey Jones. Now in this one, when a group of girls on a road trip turn onto a remote county road, expecting a shortcut, soon they're driving for their lives, pursued by a horror beyond anything they ever imagined. Pro tip, everyone should know by now that it's a bad idea to take a shortcut in a horror story, especially if the road you're taking has a nickname like the Devil's Driveway. Finally, on March 18th, this one from an indie publisher, and it caught my eye for being set in the Texas Hill Country, my own stomping grounds. The Wretched and Undone, by debut author J.E. Weiner, is a historical Gothic set just before the Civil War. It's about 2 Polish immigrants seeking a fresh start whose dreams become a nightmare when they unwittingly provoke a sinister specter hell-bent on revenge. Moving on to March 25th, Alex Gonzalez releases the genuinely disturbing-sounding Wrecked from Erewhon Books. It's an examination of toxic masculinity and the darkest pits of the internet, about a young man named Sammy and his algorithmic descent into depravity when he develops an obsession with a site on the dark web that drives him down a twisted path to find its source, even if he must become a nightmare himself. 2 books on April the 8th, starting with Cold Eternity by S.A. Barnes. Now, here's the thing with this author. She has released 2 deep space horror novels that seem to have really captivated readers, both of which I consider completely mid, and that's me being generous. So Barnes is an author I approach with caution, but I am willing to keep giving her stuff a try to see if maybe she can crack the formula this time. In Cold Eternity, a woman on the run from a political scandal decides, for reasons I'm sure make perfect sense to her, that the best place to hide out is a gigantic space barge launched by a tech tycoon over a century before to store the cryogenically frozen bodies of Earth's most fortunate citizens. Nothing could possibly go wrong with that plan, could it? Also on April the 8th, The Cut by C.J. Dotson is the tale of a woman fleeing an abusive ex who takes a housekeeping job at a historic hotel on Lake Erie that comes with a free room. But when bizarre disappearances and suspicious goings-on among the guests and staff increase, she realizes she'll need to keep her wits about her to survive and to keep her toddler and unborn child safe from whatever lurks nearby. On April 15th, it's time for the new Ronald Malfi novel, Senseless, described as a supernaturally tinged LA puzzle box thriller in which the lives of 3 people intersect over the discovery of a woman's mutilated body in the deserts outside the city. April 22nd is a crowded day with 3 more books, starting with Eat the Ones You Love by Sarah Maria Griffin, which sounds like a very dark spin on The Little Shop of Horrors, a twisted, tangled story about workplace love affairs and plants with a taste for human flesh. It all begins when a woman named Shell takes a job at a flower shop at her local mall and sparks an immediate attraction to Nev, the florist. But, unbeknownst to them both, Nev is the obsessive focus of a sentient carnivorous plant growing out of sight in the heart of the mall. The Sundowners Dance is the new novel by Bram Stoker Award finalist Todd Kiesling. Described as Cocoon meets The Color Out of Space, it's about an elderly widower who relocates to a retirement community and discovers his new neighbors are worshipping a meteorite. Finally, on April 22nd, Nat Cassidy returns with his 3rd book from Nightfire, When the Wolf Comes Home. One night, Jess, a struggling actress, finds a 5-year-old runaway hiding in the bushes outside her apartment. After a violent, bloody encounter with the boy's father, she and the boy find themselves running for their lives. Jess slowly comes to a horrifying understanding of the butchery that follows them. The boy can turn his every fear into reality, and when the wolf finally comes home, no one will be safe. 2 books. On April 29th, Scott Carson, author of Lost Man's Lane, releases Departure 37, in which a bizarre and frightening chain of events is set in motion after most of America's commercial airliners are grounded because hundreds of pilots all refuse to fly. Their reasoning is that in the middle of the night, they received frantic calls from their mothers begging them not to fly that day. But none of the mothers say they even made those calls, and some of the pilots' mothers are dead. Also on the 29th, Chuck Wendig returns with The Staircase in the Woods, which looks like it plays off a very popular urban legend or creepypasta concept. I mean, just do a search on YouTube for Staircase in the Woods and you'll find dozens of videos. And the story leans on the trope of 4 adult friends reuniting 20 years after one of their childhood pals climbed up a mysterious random staircase deep in the woods and vanished. Should be a fun one. May 12th sees the impossibly prolific Seanan McGuire returning with a new Mira Grant novel, which is the pseudonym she uses for writing horror. And however you might feel about McGuire's urban fantasies, gotta tell ya, every Mira Grant book I've read so far has really cooked. Overgrowth is a full-on body horror, fungal horror, alien invasion epic, described as Day of the Triffids meets Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Anastasia has been telling people since she was 3 years old that she's an alien disguised as a person and that her real family is coming back for her. And now the world is about to discover she was telling the truth all along. Also on May 12th, if you're looking for more of those incredible Latin American Gothic vibes, Bochica is the debut novel by Carolina Flores Cresciaro, I hope I got that right, a real-life Latin American haunted mansion, a murky labyrinth of family secrets, a young aristocratic woman desperate to escape her past, in this haunting novel perfect for fans of Mexican Gothic and The Shining. On May 20th, Caitlin Starling's new novel, The Starving Saints, is released. It's a medieval horror saga set in a besieged castle. With their provisions quickly running out, they are suddenly visited by the divine figures of the Constant Lady and her saints, who miraculously heal the sick and replenish the food so bountifully every night becomes a feast. And only 3 women can see behind the facade to understand the true horrors about to unfold. Moving on to June 17th, this might seem like an unusual pick for me, as it's a YA novel. Raquel Marie's If We Survive This is, as the title suggests, a survival horror opus, set 6 months into a global viral 28 days later kind of outbreak, as Flora and her elder brother Kane undertake a perilous journey from their LA suburb to their family's Northern California cabin, hoping for refuge. The book actually sounds pretty bleak and dark, and I appreciate that it doesn't sound like it's gonna fall into the typical YA rut of having to force a romance into the proceedings, though I will say it's concerning that the brother is named Kane. Finally, for June, The Girl in the Creek by Wendy N. Wagner releases on the 24th, a pulse-pounding echo horror about how climate change is transforming our world, perfect for fans of Jeff Vandermeer and T. Kingfisher. Determined to uncover the truth about her brother Brian, who went missing 5 years ago, Erin heads to the foothills of Mount Hood, where he was last seen alive. And when she discovers the corpse of a local woman in a creek, Erin unknowingly puts herself in the crosshairs of very powerful forces from this world and beyond, hell-bent on keeping their secrets buried. July 15th is a busy release date with 3 titles. First is by none other than Silvia Moreno Garcia with her new novel, The Bewitching, a multi-generational horror saga in which Minerva, a college student researching the history of horror literature, realizes that the author whose work she's focusing on, and who also attended Minerva's university decades before, might have based her most famous novel on true events, and these disturbing events also echo the stories Minerva's great-grandmother told about her girlhood in 1900s Mexico, where she had a terrifying encounter with a witch. Also on the 15th, One Lucky Day is the new Nightfire release by Chuck Tingle, and it sounds like a full-on horror comedy, which would be on brand. After a global disaster prompts thousands of comically unlikely deaths, a bisexual statistics professor who has convinced herself she might not exist, and an ethically dubious government agent must travel to Las Vegas, because why not, to unravel the connection between deadly bouts of absurdity and a supernaturally lucky casino. Finally, on the 15th, Gallery Books releases One Yellow Eye by Lee Bradford, a heart-wrenching and unique spin on the zombie mythos, in which Kesta Shelley, a brilliant scientist, desperately searches for a cure after a devastating epidemic, while also hiding a monumental secret, her undead husband. There are whispers of a top-secret lab working on a cure, and she desperately hopes to be recruited. But can she save her husband before he is discovered? Or worse, will they trigger another outbreak? Wrapping out July on the 22nd, The Library at Hellebore is the new book by Cassandra Caw. Now, the downside is this is a dark academia story, kind of getting passé with those, but the upside is it sounds like Caw avoids the usual tired cliches and has made this one brutal and nasty indeed. The Hellebore Technical Institute for the Gifted is the premier academy for the dangerously powerful, the Antichrists and Ragnaroks, the World Eaters and Apocalypse Makers. But there's more to Hellebore than meets the eye. On graduation day, the faculty go on a ravenous rampage, feasting on Alessa's class. Only Alessa and a group of her classmates escape the carnage. Trapped in the school's library, they must offer a human sacrifice every night, or else the faculty will break down the door and kill everyone. And they probably don't get their student loans forgiven either. August is an exciting month, starting on the 12th with a new book by Hailey Piper, who only has 2 books coming out this year, so I guess she's going easy on us. In A Game in Yellow, a couple search to spice up their sex life leads them down a path of madness. A kink-fixated couple, Carmen and Blanca, have been in a rut. That is, until Blanca discovers the pages to a strange play, The King in Yellow. Read too much and you'll fall into madness, but read just a little and pull back, and it gives you the adrenaline rush of survivor's euphoria, leading Carmen to fall into a game of lust at a nightmare's edge. In September, Haley also releases a new story collection through Titan called Teenage Girls Can Be Demons. So, send that to your local chapter of Moms for Liberty. Then sit back and watch the fun. On August 19th, Isabel Cañas is back with The Possession of Alba Diaz. In 1765, plague sweeps through the Zacatecas. Alba flees with her wealthy merchant parents and fiancé, Carlos, to his family's isolated mine for refuge. But safety proves fleeting, as other dangers soon bare their teeth. Alba begins suffering from strange hallucinations, sleepwalking, and violent convulsions. She senses something cold lurking beneath her skin, something angry, something wrong. Finally, on August 26th, Joshua Hull's 8114 is a terrifying horror novel investigating the mysterious death of a high school friend through an embattled podcast and hallucinatory hauntings at the abandoned house of his childhood. Joshua Hull is the screenwriter of Glorious, film I'm not quite familiar with, but I can look it up, and he brings an edge of horror film expertise to this story of small-town haunting, trauma, and grief that just won't let go. 8114 roots out the rot of a small town's past and unravels the memories we must face to survive the present. September 16th sees the arrival of Fiend, the new horror novel by Alma Katsu, and this one's not a historical, but set in the present day. Imagine if the Sackler family had a demon at their beck and call. I mean, they kind of did, but we'll go with this. The Berisha family has always been exceptionally lucky in their import-export business, while their rivals have always suffered devastating setbacks and misfortune. But when the family blessing starts looking more like a curse, the Berishas begin to splinter and turn on each other. They didn't get to be one of the richest families in the world without spilling a little blood, and this time it'll be their own. 2 titles on September 23rd, starting with Laura Elliott's Awakened from Angry Robot. Civilization has ended. In a bid to make us more productive, science took sleep from humanity. But sleeplessness turned people into feral monsters, and now a small group of scientists are trapped in the Tower of London, consumed by guilt at what they have done and desperately searching for a cure. Then one day, as the last ravens circle, 2 miraculous survivors walk into the tower. Are they the answer, or a dreadful new question? Then, also on the 23rd, if a game in yellow didn't give you fair warning that 2025 will be the year horror gets horny, Sarah Gailey is back with Spread Me, a darkly seductive tale of survival in which a routine probe at a research station turns deadly when the team discovers a strange specimen in search of a warm place to stay. Now, if the title alone didn't clue you in to the complete absence of subtlety Sarah is bringing to this novella, well, her heroine is named Kinsey, and the tagline for the book is, "Man is the wettest place to hide." I suspect the cover reveal is going to be something else. Getting close to the end here, on September 30th, St. Martin's Press releases The October Film Haunt by author Michael Wehunt. A story exploring 21st century online paranoia and obsessive fandoms. It's about a cult horror film whose fan base is determined to get a sequel made, and how a former horror blogger is drawn, against her will, into their manipulative plans when they begin stalking her. Now, this has very enthusiastic early blurbs from virtually everyone who's anyone writing horror today, so I'm hoping for good things. And finally, we've reached the end. And the last title on the list is a book that is long delayed, still highly tentative, though some online bookstores are announcing an October release. It is best to take that with a grain of salt. However, the author himself has said that a 2025 release date is likely. And if it does happen, King Sorrow will be the first novel from Joe Hill since The Fireman in 2016. It's the story of college student Arthur Oakes and his group of close friends, all of them outsiders, who intend to use a tome bound in human skin in an arcane ritual to summon the notorious dragon demon King Sorrow to kill their tormentors in exchange for their worship. But dragon demons, shockingly enough, are not to be trusted. Now, Joe Hill has said this one will be long, like Nosferatu, and clearly it has taken him a good while. Fingers crossed it'll be worth the wait. And there you have it, a mind-blowing 40 horror novels to crush your TBR for 2025. Now let me know which of these you're looking forward to the most, and if I actually managed to miss something, then please let us all know about it in the comments. Now stay tuned to the channel for the anticipated 2025 fantasy releases. I think you'll be wanting to check that out for sure. Now, as I always say, if you enjoyed watching, please hit that like button, share the video far and wide with all of your SFF and horror reading friends, and above all, please subscribe. If you have not done so, that is how the channel grows. There are also ways to support the channel. You can leave a super like in the comments. As I said last time in the SF video, I think that's an idea that YouTube stole from Twitch, but that's fine. It's a good one. And in the SF video comments, somebody left a very nice super like, so I'm very grateful to that individual. Thank you so much. Really nice surprise. You can also make one-time donations to my Buy Me a Coffee page. But just so you know, full disclosure, all monies donated to the channel go to pay Matt Olson, my brilliant and wonderfully gifted channel artist who, for the entire length of this channel since I launched more than 10 years ago, has been doing my beautiful thumbnails. No AI ever in my thumbnails. Always it's going to be Matt. All right? So thank you once again, and thank you all for being the very best viewers in all of BookTube, and until I see all of you next time, please stay safe, stay healthy, and spooky reading.